The emergency beacon cut through space like a cry for help. Commander Hana Kim stared at the signal on her ship's main screen. The weak transmission came from somewhere beyond the asteroid field, flickering in and out like a dying heartbeat. "It's definitely alien," said Tae-woo from his position at the weapons console. His dark eyes showed worry. "Could be a trap, Commander." Hana studied the data streaming across her screen. The UES Defiant Dawn had been exploring this sector for 3 months without seeing another living soul. Now this distress call appeared right in their path. Her 43 crew members looked to her for orders. "What kind of ship?" she asked. So-Ra worked quickly at her station, fingers dancing over the controls. "Small cargo vessel, Commander. The signal is weak, but automated. Says they have injured aboard, and life support failing." Hana felt her chest tighten. Every human ship carried the same basic rule burned into their training: help those in need. It didn't matter if they were human, alien, or something else entirely. If someone called for help, humans answered. "Commander," Tae-woo said again, "we should be careful. This sector has been quiet for months. Why would a ship appear here now?" "Because they need help," Hana replied firmly. She turned to her first officer, Da-yoon, who stood beside her chair. They had served together for 5 years, and Da-yoon knew her well enough to see the decision already made. "Set course for the signal source. Alert all departments to prepare for rescue operations." Da-yoon nodded but kept her voice low. "Tae-woo might be right, Hana. Something feels wrong about this." "Maybe," Hana said, "but we can't ignore people who need help. That's not who we are." The Defiant Dawn moved carefully through the asteroid field. In the engineering section, Min-ho monitored the engines while his team prepared emergency power for the rescue. In medical, Jun-sik gathered supplies and prepared beds for wounded aliens. Throughout the ship, crew members did what humans always did when others suffered. They prepared to help. The distress signal grew stronger as they approached. Soon, So-Ra could make out the damaged ship on her sensors. It tumbled slowly through space, dark except for a few flickering lights. "There!" So-Ra pointed at her screen. "I can see hull damage. They definitely need help." Hana felt relief. The ship looked exactly as helpless as the distress call claimed. Maybe Tae-woo was wrong. Maybe this was just what it seemed. People in trouble who needed rescue. "Take us alongside," she ordered. "Prepare boarding teams." That's when everything went wrong. The space around them exploded with light as dozens of ships appeared from nowhere. Massive alien vessels uncloaked like wolves surrounding prey. The damaged cargo ship had been bait, and the Defiant Dawn had walked straight into the trap. "Battle stations!" Hana shouted, but it was already too late. The alien ships opened fire immediately. Energy beams tore through the Defiant Dawn's shields like paper. The ship shook violently as explosions rocked the hull. Warning sirens screamed throughout the vessel. "Vorthak Empire ships," So-Ra yelled over the noise. 12 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers." Hana gripped her chair as another blast sent her stumbling. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy as brutal warriors who showed no mercy. They had studied humanity for months, learning their weaknesses. And the greatest human weakness was their need to help others. "Return fire." Tae-woo's hands flew over his controls, but the Defiant Dawn was an exploration ship, not a warship. Their weapons barely scratched the attacking vessels. On the main screen, Hana watched the Vorthak ships close in like predators. They had planned this perfectly. The false distress call, the perfect location, even the timing, everything designed to trap a human ship using their own compassion against them. "Hull breach on deck 7, someone shouted. "Engineering reports power failing," called another voice. Through the chaos, Hana heard Min-ho over the communication system. His voice was strained but determined. "I can restore shields if I can get to the main power coupling. Just give me 2 minutes." "Go," Hana ordered, then turned to Da-eun. "Begin evacuation procedures." "What about you?" Da-eun asked. "I stay with my ship." Another massive explosion shook the Defiant Dawn. The lights flickered and went out, leaving only emergency power. In the darkness, Hana could hear her crew fighting desperately to save their ship and each other. She heard Minho scream over the communication system as energy feedback burned through the engineering section. The ship's shields never came back online. So Ra died when debris from an exploding console crushed her at her station. She had been trying to send a warning to other human ships when the blast hit. Jun-Sik was killed in medical bay when the Vorthak energy beams punched through the hull. He died treating wounded crew members, refusing to leave them behind. One by one, Hana listened to her crew die. Each loss felt like a piece of her soul being torn away. These weren't just crew members, they were family. She had served with most of them for years, knew their families, their hopes, their dreams. "Hana!" Da-Eun's voice came from somewhere in the smoke and darkness. "The escape pods." But even as her friend tried to save her, another blast tore through the bridge. Da-Eun disappeared in fire and metal, her last act reaching toward Hana with desperate eyes. The Defiant Dawn was dying. Emergency power failed deck by deck. The air grew thin as life support systems shut down. Hana crawled through twisted metal and sparking electronics, her left arm hanging useless at her side. Her ribs sent spikes of pain through her chest with each breath. Behind her, she could hear the Vorthak boarding the ship. They moved through the vessel like executioners, making sure no human had survived their trap. They laughed as they worked, pleased with their successful hunt. Hana reached the emergency pod bay just as her strength gave out. Blood ran down her face from a head wound, and she could barely stay conscious. The escape pod was damaged but still functional. She dragged herself inside and sealed the hatch just as Vorthak soldiers entered the bay. Through the small window, she watched them examine the pod bay, but they assumed any survivors would have already launched. They didn't bother to check the damaged pod in the corner. As the Defiant Dawn went completely dark around her, Hana closed her eyes and let unconsciousness take her. When she woke, she would be alone in a dead ship, surrounded by the bodies of everyone she had ever cared about. The trap had worked perfectly. Human compassion had led to human death. But the Vorthak had made one mistake. They had left Hana Kim alive. Hana woke to silence. The kind of complete dead silence that only existed in the vacuum of space. No humming engines, no air circulation, no voices of her crew. Just the sound of her own breathing in the small escape pod. Pain hit her immediately. Her left arm was definitely broken, hanging at an odd angle. Each breath sent fire through her ribs. Blood had dried on her face from the head wound, but she was alive, which was more than she could say for anyone else aboard the Defiant Dawn. She looked through the pod's small window. The ship around her was completely dark, a tomb floating in space. Emergency lights flickered occasionally like a dying heartbeat, but that was all. The Vorthak ships were long gone, probably hunting other human vessels with the same trap that had killed her crew. Hana forced herself to move despite the pain. The escape pod had basic medical supplies, enough to treat her injuries. She used a medical scanner to confirm what she already knew. Broken arm, 3 cracked ribs, concussion, and various cuts, painful but not fatal. She wrapped her arm in a temporary splint and took medicine for the pain. Then she sat back and stared at the dark ship around her. 42 good people were dead because she had decided to answer a distress call, because she had believed helping others was always the right choice. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the darkness. "I'm so sorry." But being sorry wouldn't bring them back, and staying in the escape pod wouldn't accomplish anything either. She needed to get into the ship and see what was left. The emergency pod was connected to the main hull by a service tunnel. Hana put on an emergency suit and carefully made her way through the tunnel into the ship proper. The hallways were dark and cold, littered with debris from the attack. She had to step carefully around pieces of ceiling and broken equipment. She found Da-Eun's body on the bridge, crushed under a fallen beam. Her best friend's face was peaceful, as if she had simply gone to sleep. Hana knelt beside her and gently closed Da-Eun's eyes. "You always told me to be careful," Hana said softly. "You were right. You were always right." The ship's main computer was damaged but still functional. Hana managed to get it working using emergency power from the pod. As data slowly appeared on the cracked screen, she began to understand the full scope of what had happened. The attack hadn't been random. The Vorthak had detailed information about human ships, their routes, their procedures. They knew exactly how humans would respond to a distress call. They had planned this ambush perfectly. But worse than that, the computer contained intercepted Vorthak communications. As Hana read through the messages, her blood grew cold. The attack on the Defiant Dawn was just one of many. The Vorthak had been systematically hunting human ships for months, using false distress calls to lure them into traps, and they were planning something bigger. The messages talked about a major assault on a human colony world. The target was New Busan, home to over 2 million civilians. The Vorthak planned to attack in 3 waves, overwhelming the colony's defenses through sheer numbers. They wanted to make an example of human weakness to show the galaxy what happened, to races that showed mercy to their enemies. Hana's hand shook as she read the details. New Busan wasn't just any colony, it was her home. Her younger brother Jin Woo lived there with his wife Subin and their little daughter Ah-rin. If the Vorthak attacked New Busan, her family would die just like her crew had died. "No," she said aloud, her voice echoing in the empty bridge. "Not them too." She kept reading, learning everything she could about Vorthak plans. The assault was still months away, but they were already moving ships into position. The attack would come from 3 directions, hitting the colony's orbital platforms first, then landing troops on the surface. The colony's defenses were minimal. A few patrol boats and some orbital weapons platforms. They wouldn't last an hour against a full Vorthak fleet. Hana pushed back from the computer and looked around the ruined bridge. Her crew was gone. Her ship was dying. By all rights, she should be dead too. But she wasn't, and that meant she had a chance to do something about this. She spent the next few hours exploring the ship, cataloging what was still functional. The main engines were destroyed, but auxiliary power still worked in some sections. The weapon systems were offline, but she found stored mining charges in the cargo bay. The Defiant Dawn had been equipped for mineral surveys. More importantly, she found personal items belonging to her crew. So Ra's tactical manual, filled with notes about combat strategies. Minho's engineering guides, with his careful handwriting explaining how to modify ship systems. Da-Yun's navigation tools, marked with routes through dangerous space. Each item was a reminder of someone she had lost. But they were also resources she could use. Her crew might be dead, but their knowledge, their skills, their experience, all of that was still here, waiting to be used. Hana began making plans. The Defiant Dawn couldn't fight anymore, but it could still move. The ship's stealth systems were damaged but repairable. If she could fix them, she might be able to strike back at the Vorthak without being detected. She thought about Minho's expertise with ship modifications. He had always said any ship could be turned into a weapon if you knew what you were doing. She thought about Sora's tactical knowledge, all those strategies for fighting against superior numbers. Most of all, she thought about Da-Un's words. Sometimes the right choice isn't the safe choice. The Vorthak had used human compassion as a weapon against her crew. They had turned humanity's greatest strength into a fatal weakness. They thought they understood humans, thought they knew how humans would react. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Hana began working, using her crew's knowledge to transform the Defiant Dawn from an exploration vessel into something else entirely. She wasn't sure what yet, but she knew it would be something the Vorthak weren't expecting. They had killed her crew. They planned to kill her family. They thought one damaged human ship posed no threat to their empire. Hana smiled grimly as she began rerouting power systems according to Minho's notes. The Vorthak had made a mistake when they left her alive. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous human was one who had nothing left to lose. The hunt was about to begin. 3 weeks after the ambush, Hana had transformed the Defiant Dawn into something no Vorthak would recognize. The ship still looked like a damaged wreck from the outside, which was exactly what she wanted. Inside, however, she had rebuilt critical systems using knowledge from her dead crew. Following Minho's engineering notes, she had rigged the mining charges as improvised weapons. The ship's cargo bay now held enough explosives to crack an asteroid in half. She had rerouted power from non-essential systems to boost the stealth generators, making the ship nearly invisible to most sensors. Most importantly, she had learned to think like her tactical officer So-Ra. The manual So-Ra had left behind was filled with strategies for fighting against superior forces, hit and run attacks, using enemy expectations against them, making each strike count because you might not get a second chance. Hana's first target was a Vorthak supply convoy she had tracked through intercepted communications. 3 cargo ships and 2 escorts, carrying fuel and ammunition to forward bases. The convoy followed a predictable route through an asteroid field, thinking they were safe in Vorthak-controlled space. They were wrong. Hana positioned the Defiant Dawn among the asteroids, using the ship's damaged appearance to blend in with the floating rocks. When the convoy appeared, she waited until they were committed to their course through the narrow passage. The lead escort ship passed within 100 meters of her position. At that range, even damaged weapons could be deadly. Hana fired everything she had, the ship's remaining energy weapons, followed immediately by mining charges launched from cargo tubes. The escort ship's shields collapsed under the sudden assault. Secondary explosions tore through its hull as ammunition stores cooked off. The convoy scattered in panic, but they were trapped in the asteroid field with nowhere to run. Hana used the Defiant Dawn's smaller size to dart between rocks, staying ahead of return fire while picking off cargo ships one by one. When it was over, the entire convoy was destroyed. Hana salvaged what she could from the wreckage: weapons, supplies, and most importantly, intelligence about other Vorthak operations. She felt no satisfaction from the victory. Each explosion reminded her of So-Ra's death, of the bridge lighting up with enemy fire. But it was a start. The Vorthak had killed her crew, and now she was killing them back. The next target was a communication relay station on the edge of Vorthak space. Hana approached it slowly, using the Defiant Dawn stealth systems to avoid detection. The station was lightly defended, just a few automated weapon platforms and a small garrison. This time she used a different approach. Instead of direct attack, she followed Dayun's diplomatic strategies, but turned them into deception. She broadcast a false distress signal, copying the same type of transmission the Vorthak had used to trap her ship. The station commander sent a patrol ship to investigate. Hana was waiting with a spread of mining charges that turned the patrol ship into debris. While the station was reacting to the loss of their ship, she slipped close enough to plant explosives on the communication array. The explosion took out the station's ability to call for help. Then Hana systematically destroyed the weapon platforms and forced the garrison to surrender. She took their weapons and equipment, but more importantly, she accessed their communication logs. The intelligence she gathered was devastating. The Vorthak were using humans' own compassion against them throughout the galaxy. False distress calls, fake refugee ships, staged disasters, all designed to lure human vessels into ambushes. Dozens of ships had been lost, hundreds of crew members killed. But she also learned something else. The Vorthak were starting to fear something they called the Ghost Ship, a mysterious human vessel that struck without warning and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They had assigned a war master named Vexthor to hunt down this threat. Hana smiled grimly. They were afraid of her. Good. Fear was a weapon she could use. Over the following weeks, she struck again and again. A fuel depot here, a supply ship there, an isolated patrol vessel caught alone in deep space. Each attack was carefully planned. Using her crew's knowledge, each victory achieved through their sacrifice. She began to hear her dead friends' voices as she worked. Minho guiding her through complex engineering modifications. So-Ra suggesting tactical approaches for seemingly impossible situations. Da-Yun reminding her to think several moves ahead, to anticipate enemy responses. They weren't really there, of course, but their knowledge lived on in the notes they had left behind, in the systems they had helped design, in the memories of everything they had taught her over the years of serving together. The Vorthak response escalated quickly. War Master Vexthor deployed hunter-killer groups to patrol supply routes. He set up elaborate traps using fake supply convoys to lure the ghost ship into ambushes. He even began destroying neutral stations that might have provided aid or information to the mysterious human vessel. But Hana had learned to think like a guerrilla fighter. She struck where they least expected, avoided obvious traps, and used their own tactics against them. When Vexthor deployed hunter-killer groups, she attacked their supply bases. When he set traps along major routes, she hit targets in supposedly secure rear areas. Most importantly, she was learning about Vorthak technology and tactics. Each successful attack taught her more about their weaknesses. Their ships were powerful but rigid in their thinking. Their commanders were brutal but predictable. They expected enemies to fight honorably, in straight battles with clear objectives. They didn't know how to deal with a single damaged ship that refused to follow the rules of war. 3 months after beginning her campaign, Hana intercepted a priority communication that made her blood run cold. The assault on New Busan had been moved up. Instead of months, she now had weeks before the Vorthak fleet would reach her homeworld. She stared at the intelligence report, calculating distances and travel times. Even if she left immediately, even if she pushed the Defiant Dawn beyond its limits, she might not reach New Busan in time to warn them. But she had to try. Her brother Jin Woo, his wife Subin, little Ah Rin, they were all she had left of her old life. If the Vorthak killed them too, then everything she had loved would be gone. Hana began plotting a course to New Busan, knowing it would take her through the heart of Vorthak space. Warmaster Vexthor and his hunter-killer groups would be waiting for her. The journey would be more dangerous than anything she had attempted so far. But her crew had died protecting others. Taiyun had reached for her even as the bridge exploded around them. So Ra had been trying to send warnings when the debris crushed her. Jun-sik had died treating wounded rather than saving himself. They had shown her what it meant to be human, to protect others even when it cost everything. Now it was her turn to honor their example. The Defiant Dawn turned toward home, carrying its cargo of grief, rage, and determination through the darkness between stars. The neutral trading station hung in space like a metal spider, its arms reaching out to dock ships from a dozen different species. Hana brought the Defiant Dawn in slowly, using minimal power to avoid attracting attention. The ship's damaged appearance helped. Just another casualty of the ongoing war looking for repairs and supplies. She needed information about Vorthak fleet movements, and neutral stations were often the best source. Traders heard everything, saw everything, and sold everything for the right price. Hana was negotiating with a Ziloni information broker when she heard a familiar accent behind her, a human voice, speaking in the distinct dialect of the outer colonies. "That's military-grade sensor data," the voice said. "Where did you get it?" She turned to see a young man with sharp eyes and calloused hands. He wore civilian clothes, but he moved like someone with military training. More importantly, he was human, and humans were rare in this part of space. Kai Li, he introduced himself after she approached. "Used to run cargo between the colonies until the Vorthak decided my family were acceptable casualties in their war." His story came out in pieces as they sat in the station's cantina. Kai's family had been aboard a colony transport when the Vorthak attacked using their false distress signal tactic. His parents, his sister, his young nephew, all dead because they had stopped to help what they thought was a damaged ship. "I've been hunting the bastards ever since," Kai said, staring into his drink. "Small strikes, hit-and-run attacks. Nothing like what you've been doing, though. The ghost ship that's been terrorizing their supply lines, that's you, isn't it?" Hana studied him carefully. Trust was dangerous in her line of work, but she recognized something in his eyes, the same cold rage that burned in her own heart. The same need for justice that drove her forward each day. "What makes you think that?" she asked. "Because you're asking the same questions I would ask if I had a ship capable of taking on Vorthak cruisers. And because—" He hesitated, then continued. "Because you have the look, like someone who's lost everything and decided to make the universe pay for it." Over the next few hours, they shared information. Kai had contacts throughout the underground resistance, humans and aliens who opposed Vorthak expansion. He knew smuggling routes, safe houses, and hidden supply caches. More importantly, he knew about other survivors. There's an engineer named Hyun-soo, Kai explained, officially listed as killed when the Vorthak destroyed his research station. Actually, he's been hiding in the Kepler asteroid belt, building weapons for the resistance. And there's Ye Jin. She was a communications specialist before her colony. Ship got hit. Now she intercepts Vorthak transmissions and sells the intelligence to anyone fighting them. Hana felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. She had been fighting alone for so long, using only the memories of her dead crew. But there were other survivors out there. Other humans who had lost everything and chosen to fight back. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because small strikes aren't enough anymore," Kai replied. "The Vorthak are planning something big. Multiple fleet movements, increased patrols, priority communications about some major operation. If we don't stop them soon, a lot more humans are going to die." He was right, and Hana knew it. Her individual attacks had hurt the Vorthak, but they weren't enough to prevent the assault on New Busan. She needed help, and these survivors could provide it. 3 days later, the Defiant Dawn rendezvoused with Kai's ship in a remote asteroid field. Hyun-soo's hidden base was tucked inside a hollowed-out asteroid, invisible to most sensors. The engineer himself was a quiet man with burn, scars on his hands, and a reputation for turning scrap metal into deadly weapons. "Your ship," he said after examining the Defiant Dawn. "It's a miracle it's still flying, but I can make it better, stronger, more dangerous." Ye Jin arrived a day later in a small courier ship loaded with communication equipment. She was younger than Hana had expected, but her expertise was undeniable. Within hours of arriving, she had tapped into Vorthak communication networks and was feeding intelligence directly to their base. "The assault on New Busan," she reported after analyzing the intercepted data. "It's bigger than we thought. 3 full battle fleets, over 200 ships total. They're planning to hit the orbital defenses first, then land troops on 3 different continents." Hana felt sick. New Busan's defenses couldn't handle 3 ships, let alone 200. Her brother's family, everyone she had grown up with, they were all going to die unless something changed. "When?" she asked. 6 weeks, Ye Jin replied. "Maybe less if they accelerate the timeline. 6 weeks to warn New Busan and somehow stop the largest Vorthak fleet ever assembled." It seemed impossible, but Hana had learned that impossible things became possible when you had nothing left to lose. Hyun-soo worked for 3 straight weeks modifying the Defiant Dawn. He added stealth mines that could be deployed silently, upgraded the ship's weapons with salvaged Vorthak technology, and reinforced the hull with armor plating from destroyed enemy vessels. Most importantly, he helped Hana understand something crucial about Vorthak fleet tactics. Their ships were individually powerful, but they relied heavily on coordination and communication. Disrupt their command structure, and the entire fleet would become vulnerable. "They're like a pack of hunters," Hyun-soo explained. "Dangerous when working together, but much weaker when separated and confused." Ye Jin's intelligence gathering revealed the location of a Vorthak command ship, the vessel that would coordinate the assault on New Busan. It was heavily defended, surrounded by escort ships, and protected by multiple layers of security. But it was also the key to everything. If they could capture or destroy that command ship, the entire assault fleet would lose coordination. The attack might be delayed or even called off entirely. "It's suicide," Kai said when Hana outlined her plan. "That ship has more firepower than most space stations." "Maybe," Hana replied, "but it's also our only chance to save New Busan." The others looked at each other, weighing the odds. They all knew the risks. They had all lost everything to the Vorthak already. But they also knew that sometimes the only way to honor the dead was to risk joining them. "When do we leave?" Hyun-soo asked. As they prepared for what might be their final mission, Hana thought about her crew aboard the Defiant Dawn. Da-eun would have called this plan reckless, so Ra would have demanded better intelligence before committing to the attack. Minho would have worried about the ship's ability to handle the stress of combat, but they would have come with her anyway. Because that's what the crew of the Defiant Dawn did. They protected others, even when the odds were impossible. Now she had a new crew, survivors like herself. People who had lost everything but refused to give up. They weren't her original family, but they understood what she was fighting for. War Master Vexthor was still hunting for the ghost ship that had been terrorizing Vorthak supply lines. He was about to discover that the ghost ship had found new allies and that their next target wasn't a supply convoy or communication station. Their next target was him. The captured Vorthak command ship revealed everything. Yejin worked frantically at the alien computer systems, while Hana and the others secured the vessel. The intelligence they found was worse than their worst fears. 3 fleets, Yejin reported, her face pale in the glow of the alien displays. The assault on New Busan starts in 18 days. They're not just planning to conquer the colony, they want to make an example of it. Total destruction. No survivors. Hana stared at the tactical displays showing Vorthak fleet positions, over 200 ships moving into attack formation around New Busan. Her home world was surrounded, and the colonists had no idea what was coming. We have to warn them, she said. Warning them won't be enough, Hyun-soo replied grimly. New Busan has maybe 20 patrol boats and some orbital platforms. Against 3 battle fleets? They need evacuation, not a warning. But evacuation would take weeks, and they had 18 days. Even if they started immediately, millions of people would still be trapped when the Vorthak arrived. Including Jin, Wu Subin, and Little Arin. Then we stop the fleets ourselves, Hana said. Kai looked at her as if she had lost her mind. 4 people in 2 ships against the largest Vorthak armada ever assembled? That's not brave, Hana. That's insane. Maybe it was insane. But insanity was all she had left. Her original crew was dead. Her ship was held together with spare parts and determination. Her new allies were fellow survivors with their own ghosts to carry. But they had something the Vorthak didn't expect. Knowledge of enemy tactics, modified ships that didn't appear on any Vorthak database, and most importantly, nothing left to lose. The journey to New Busan would take them through the heart of Vorthak space. War Master Vexthor had positioned hunter-killer groups along every major route, waiting for the ghost ship to make a mistake. Getting through would require every trick they had learned. They left the captured command ship rigged to explode, destroying the evidence of their presence. Then the Defiant Dawn and Kai's modified freighter began the most dangerous journey of their lives. The first encounter came in the Sigma Centauri system. A Vorthak patrol squadron spotted them on long-range sensors and moved to intercept. 6 heavy cruisers against 2 human ships. Normally, it would have been a massacre. But Hana had learned from Sora's tactical manual. Instead of running or fighting directly, she led the patrol squadron into an asteroid field where their larger ships became liabilities. Using the Defiant Dawn's superior maneuverability, she planted stealth mines throughout the field while Kai's ship drew enemy fire. When the mines detonated, they created a chain reaction that turned asteroids into projectiles. 3 Vorthak ships were destroyed immediately. The others fled in confusion, reporting that they had encountered a minefield that shouldn't have existed. The second encounter was worse. 2 full squadrons waiting in ambush at a jump point, clearly warned by the survivors from Sigma Centauri. This time there was no asteroid field to hide in, no terrain advantages to exploit. Ramming speed, Kai said over the communication channel. His ship was already damaged from the previous fight, its hull scarred by enemy fire. I'll clear you. Kai, no! Hana protested, but he had already cut communication. She watched helplessly as Kai's freighter accelerated toward the enemy formation. Vorthak ships opened fire, their beams tearing through his shields and hull, but he didn't stop. He crashed into the lead cruiser at full speed, both ships disappearing in a ball of fire that lit up space for millions of kilometers. The explosion cleared a gap in the enemy formation just wide enough for the Defiant Dawn to slip through. Hana pushed her engines beyond safe limits, racing away from the remaining Vorthak ships while alarms screamed throughout her vessel. She had lost another friend, another good person dead because of her war against the Vorthak. But she couldn't stop to mourn. Jin Woo and his family were counting on her even if they didn't know it yet. The third encounter almost ended everything. Hyun-soo's engines failed just as they reached the outer edge of New Busan's solar system. Forthak advanced scouts were already in position, and without engine power, his ship was helpless. "Take Yejin and go," he said over the communication channel. "I'll buy you time." "We don't leave people behind," Hana replied, remembering Da-Eun's words from what seemed like a lifetime ago. "Sometimes we have to," Hyun-Soo said sadly. "Tell New Busan what's coming. Make my death count for something." His ship's reactors went critical just as the Vorthak scouts moved in to capture him. The explosion took out 2 enemy vessels and damaged a third, giving Hana the distraction she needed to reach New Busan's outer defenses. But the cost was devastating. In 3 encounters, she had lost both of her new allies. Kai and Hyun-Soo were dead, their sacrifice buying her the chance to warn New Busan. She was alone again, carrying the weight of more deaths on her conscience. The New Busan defense coordinator didn't believe her at first. Commander Park thought she was a trauma victim suffering from delusions, until Yejin provided the intercepted Vorthak communications as proof. 18 days, he said after reviewing the intelligence. "We can't evacuate 2 million people in 18 days. "Then we fight," Hana replied. "With what? 20 patrol boats against 3 battle fleets?" Hana looked out at New Busan through the space station's viewing port. The blue and green world looked so peaceful, so normal. Children like Ah-Rin were probably playing in parks down there, while their parents worked and lived and loved, unaware that death was coming for them from the stars. "I don't know," she admitted, "but we'll find a way." She requested permission to visit the surface, to see her family one last time before the battle. Jin-Woo was older now, his face lined with the stress of managing a mining operation. Soo-bin had kept her warm smile, though her eyes showed concern when she saw Hana's condition. Little Ah-Rin had grown since Hana had last seen her. She was 7 now, full of questions about space and stars and why her aunt looked so sad. "Are you going to protect us?" Ah-Rin asked during dinner. Hana knelt down to look into her niece's trusting eyes. "I'm going to try." Promise. It was a promise she might not be able to keep. The Vorthak fleets were already moving into position. In 18 days, they would arrive with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. The Defiant Dawn was just 1 ship, damaged and held together by determination. But looking at Ah-Rin's innocent face, thinking about all the children on New Busan who deserved to grow up safe and free, Hana made the only promise she could. "I promise I'll never stop fighting for you." As she prepared to return to space, Hana thought about her original crew. They had died trying to help others, staying true to human nature even when it cost them everything. Now it was her turn to follow their example. The Vorthak were coming to destroy everything she loved, but they had made one crucial mistake. They thought one damaged human ship couldn't threaten their mighty fleets. They were about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the universe was someone who had already lost everything and refused to lose anything more. The Vorthak fleets arrived exactly on schedule, dropping out of hyperspace in 3 perfectly coordinated formations. Over 200 ships arranged in attack patterns that had conquered a dozen worlds. War Master Vexthor commanded from his flagship, finally ready to crush the ghost ship that had haunted his forces for months. From the bridge of the defense station, Hana watched the enemy fleets take position around New Busan. The 20 human patrol boats looked like insects compared to the massive Vorthak battleships. The orbital defense platforms had enough firepower to maybe damage a few enemy ships before being destroyed. It should have been hopeless. By every military calculation, New Busan was doomed. But Hana had spent months learning that calculations didn't account for human stubbornness. "All civilian transports are away," Commander Park reported. "We managed to evacuate about 200,000 people to the outer colonies. 200,000 saved out of 2 million. It wasn't enough, but it was something." The remaining civilians were in underground shelters protected by rock and steel and hope. "The defense platforms are ready," Yejin added from her communications station. "All patrol boats report ready for battle." Hana looked out at the approaching enemy fleets and thought about the promise she had made to Ah-Rin. The little girl was safe in one of the evacuation ships along with Jin-Woo and Soo-bin. At least her family would survive even if New Busan fell. But the planet wouldn't fall. Not if she could help it. "Commander Park," she said, I need you to order all defense platforms and patrol boats to target the Vorthak flagship on my signal. That's suicide, Park replied. They'll be destroyed before they can get close enough to matter. Maybe, but they'll also be a distraction. Hana turned away from the tactical display and headed for the docking bay, where the Defiant Dawn waited. The ship looked even more battered than before, its hull scarred by months of combat. But it was, still flying, still fighting, still carrying the memories of her original crew. She had spent the past 2 weeks preparing for this moment, following plans that Minho had sketched in his engineering notes. The ship's entire structure had been modified, turned into something that was part vessel, part weapon, part bomb. Every available space was packed with explosives, mining charges, torpedo warheads, even the ship's own fuel tanks rigged to detonate. The Defiant Dawn had become a guided missile with a human conscience, capable of delivering enough destructive force to crack a space station in half, or destroy a flagship. As Hana brought her ship online, she thought about the faces of her crew. Da-Yun's determined expression as she reached through the flames. So-Ra's concentration as she worked at her tactical station. Min-Ho's satisfied smile when an engineering solution worked perfectly. Jun-Sik's gentle hands as he treated wounded crew members. They were all with her now, their knowledge and courage built into every system of the ship. Their sacrifice had made this moment possible. All ships, this is Commander Kim aboard the Defiant Dawn. She broadcast on all frequencies. Execute attack pattern Alpha on my signal. The new Busan defense fleet began moving, 20 small ships accelerating toward the massive Vorthak formation. It looked like madness, like throwing stones at a mountain. But sometimes stones could start avalanches. War Master Vexthor watched the human attack with contempt. These primitives still didn't understand the futility of resistance. He would crush their pathetic fleet, then reduce their world to ash as an example to other species. Destroy them, he ordered. The Vorthak fleets opened fire, their combined firepower turning space into a storm of energy beams and explosions. Human patrol boats disappeared one by one, their crews dying as heroes while their sacrifice bought precious seconds. But Vexthor's attention was focused on the wrong targets. He was watching the obvious threat, the brave but doomed patrol boats charging his lines. He wasn't watching the single damaged exploration ship that had been drifting among the orbital defense platforms. By the time his sensors detected the Defiant Dawn's approach, it was too late. Hana had used every trick she had learned during months of guerrilla warfare. The ship's stealth systems hid her approach until the final moments. Her course took her through the debris of destroyed patrol boats, using the wreckage as cover. When Vexthor finally realized the threat, the Defiant Dawn was less than a kilometer from his flagship. All weapons, target that ship, he screamed, but his fleet was spread out in attack formation, unable to fire without hitting their own flagship. Hana smiled as enemy fire began tearing through her ship's hull. She thought about Arin's trusting face, about Jinwoo's family safe aboard an evacuation transport. She thought about New Busan's blue skies and green forests, about all the children who would grow up free because of what happened here today. Most of all, she thought about her crew. They had died protecting others, and now she would join them in the same cause. "This is for the Defiant Dawn," she said into the communication system, knowing the Vorthak were listening. "This is for every human you murdered with your lies. This is for everyone who answered a distress call because they believed in helping others." The Defiant Dawn struck Vexthor's flagship at full speed. The explosion lit up the entire system, a new star born from human determination and Vorthak arrogance. The flagship simply vanished, consumed by forces that turned matter into pure energy. The blast wave spread outward, crippling nearby ships and sending shock waves through the entire Vorthak formation. Without their command ship, without Vexthor's coordination, the three fleets fell into chaos. Ship captains tried to take command, but none had the authority or the knowledge to control such a massive force. Some ships fled, others fired on each other in confusion. The carefully planned assault dissolved into panic and retreat. New Busan's remaining defenders, inspired by Hana's sacrifice, rallied to destroy the scattered enemy vessels. What should have been a massacre became a victory, paid for with the life of one woman who refused to let evil triumph. 3 days later, Jinwoo stood before a memorial wall in New Busan's capital city. The wall listed every member of the Defiant, Dawn's crew, their names carved in black stone that reflected the stars. At the bottom, a simple inscription: "They answered the call." Little Ah Rin placed a white flower at the base of the memorial, her small hand gentle on the stone. "Did Aunt Hana keep her promise?" she asked. Jinwoo looked up at the blue sky, at the world his sister had died to protect. Ships moved overhead. Not Vorthak warships, but human vessels carrying supplies and hope to rebuild what had been damaged. "Yes," he said quietly. "She kept her promise." The memorial stood as a reminder that sometimes the greatest strength came from the greatest loss, that humans would always choose to help others, even when it cost them everything. That evil could plan and scheme and murder, but it could never destroy the one thing that made humans truly dangerous: their refusal to abandon hope. Hana Kim had been broken by tragedy, transformed by loss, and ultimately redeemed by love. Her ship was gone, her crew was dead, but her retribution had saved a world. And somewhere among the stars, the spirit of the Defiant Dawn sailed on, carrying the memory of those who chose to answer the call when others needed help. Because that's what humans did, even when it killed them, especially when it killed them.